Action.
What's up, everyone? Vinny Musso here from Musso Athletics, here for day 8 of our 30 days of force. Still talking about force absorption, wrapping up that first 10 days pretty soon. So today, what I wanted to go over, not a lot of board work today. Today's video really focusing more on exercise demonstrations. We've been doing a lot of board work and going over a lot of the, some science that's behind it. Different methods for training and working our force absorption, and talking a little bit about programming. But today's video, I wanted to put the main emphasis on showing different types of exercises that are sport and movement specific. A lot of the videos of the exercises that we've seen so far, we've seen a lot of weight room stuff, which obviously we need. We have to use weights and utilize the weight room to build that base of strength. Really progressively overload our body, progressively overload our muscles, so we do improve our capability to absorb force. But again, if you think particularly in in the world of sports, again, we emphasize those slow eccentrics and those catches. You're working on our rate of force development, but when in a sporting game are you ever absorbing force and just sticking and holding that position? Other than maybe something like gymnastics where you have to stick the landing. A lot of times in sports, we have to absorb force while doing something else. And we've kind of talked about this a little bit, with the example I've used of the basketball player, going up for, anticipating going up for a dunk or a layup, and guessing that they're going to hit the defender in midair, when in reality they have to learn how to absorb at any point. So that's really the example I kind of want you to think about during while watching the exercises in this video. So again, these exercises are more sport and movement specific, and you'll see while there's still a lot of force absorption principles being applied, a lot of these are movements where, again, we're simulating and actually going through different movements that you would do in sport while absorbing contact and having to stabilize against an external force, which in a sporting world can be a lot of times it's another defender. Sometimes it's if you're catching a hard pass, whether you're in football or basketball, sometimes you have to absorb the force from that before you can do anything else. So that's what I wanted today's video to really emphasize. Again, those sport and specific movements. Hopefully, like I said, it's my goal that you can see some of these different exercises, and whether it's taking those exercises specifically and putting them in your own training program, putting them in a training program that you're working with someone else, or seeing one of the exercises and again saying I've seen that before, but seeing it again kind of gives me this different take. So that is really the point and the emphasis of today's video. And again, we'll see a lot of sports specific exercises demonstrated by my two younger brothers. I was lucky enough to have them help me out. But really pay attention to the movements and the exercises. You see a lot. Again, my background as a basketball player, I like to use a lot of basketball movements. It helps me understand stuff, and I'm sure a lot of other basketball players out there kind of feel the same way. But you'll see a lot of movements. Simulating going up and jumping, again having to absorb contact in the air and then landing after absorbing that contact. So you'll see some exercises like that. We'll see again some sports specific movements where we're actually going through some dribbling stuff where we have to again absorb force from a defender. So you'll see one in a couple of the exercises, someone dribbling and then the other person is kind of pushing them, so that person has to, while dribbling, so while still doing their sport specific movement, they have to absorb the force while not losing the ball, dribbling off their foot or anything like that. We'll see some baseball stuff as well. Again, baseball, very very rotation. There's a lot of rotation emphasized in baseball, so we have to again really learn how to absorb force in that rotational plane. So we'll see. You'll see a drill where again we're absorbing force. We'll see holding onto the bat, having to absorb the force of a band. Again, the stronger we can get, absorbing force with that rotation, the more potential we have to produce rotational force, and that's what leads, to those 450 foot home runs that everyone in baseball loves nowadays. We'll also see some injury prevention baseball exercise. You'll see, we have a band anchored down at the bottom of a stable base, holding up here on tension, and then having to control all the way through a throwing motion. A lot of throwing injuries, while they happen, kind of during that force production phase, a lot of the time it's the deceleration where the injury occurs. So a shoulder injury, an elbow injury. We see a lot of baseball players nowadays going through Tommy John injuries and having to go through that surgery. A lot of times those injuries are not necessarily from the throw itself. Again, there's a lot of force produced during that, but and sometimes the injury is caused by that. But like we've talked about before, a very high amount of injuries are from that, absorption or that deceleration phase. So when we're talking about baseball, it's just as important to be able to control your deceleration and slowing down, as it's just as important to be able to do that as to produce, kind of that whipping action to throw hard. So we'll see exercise like that. And again, I don't want to go into all the exercises now because we'll see them, throughout the video. But again, I want you to, the main takeaway I want you to take away, if you are, finding, some help and taking, benefit from these videos, is, again, working in the weight room is great. Obviously, we need that to build, that base strength and that ability to absorb force. But we also want to incorporate, again, some sport-specific movements, especially if you are training, for sport. So early on in your training, start in the weight room. Build that eccentric strength with those slow eccentrics, and that rate of eccentric force development training. But once you've done that for a couple weeks, it would definitely be good and beneficial to think about starting to incorporate more of those sport-specific movements. All right. So again, hopefully you get a lot out of this, the exercises we see today, whether it's something that you take and do yourself or something that you kind of get inspiration from to think of another type of exercise moving forward. So that'll do it for day 8 of 30 Days of Force. Stay tuned for day 9. Again, we have 2 more days talking about our force absorption before we switch gears and start talking about our force redirection. See you guys tomorrow. All right, go ahead.